days after the deadly Easter bombings, we'll show you how one of America's largest Sri Lankan communities is paying their respects.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un arrived in Russia this morning ahead of his meeting with Vladimir Putin. Hear more about what they plan to discuss.
And the de Blasio administration has pledged to reduce emissions in New York City, but some critics are saying they're doing just the opposite. From Columbia University in the city of New York, this is CJS News.
Good afternoon. I'm Caroline Kimeu.
And I'm Jose Sepulveda.
Car ownership continues to rise in New York City despite the administration's pledge to reduce traffic on city roads. CJS correspondent Kinga Razak has more on this story.
New York City is teeming with cars, and the situation has only gotten worse. Down to the rising number of vehicles on its roads. The question remains if the current mayor is helping or hurting the case.
On average, a car owner produces over 16 pounds of carbon emissions per year, which equals about 32 bags of trash. Something that could be eliminated if people gave up their cars, says Monica Ballin.
70% of people still own a car, so there is definitely an opportunity to have it go the other way.
NYU's professor of environmental science, Dale Jamison, says the city must address the growing number of car owners and their lax attitude to green living.
New Yorkers can be so self-righteous about how green we are and about how we aren't car dependent like all those terrible people out in America. Well, you know, a lot of people have cars hidden away like dirty little secrets.
Since Mayor de Blasio took office, car ownership has risen by 9%. As of now, 45% of the city's 3.1 million households own a car, and most of them have more than just one vehicle. De Blasio has proposed a plan to reduce emissions by 30% by 2030, yet has continued to hand out take-home cars to certain members of its staff.
The growth in the city's fleet is something that has certainly not been a positive for the de Blasio administration.
The city has increased its official car fleet by over 5,300 vehicles, which is a 21% growth since the Bloomberg administration. Despite growing criticism for failing to limit the number of cars, de Blasio has introduced a congestion charge for Manhattan's busiest areas starting in 2020. But his policy move is not genuine, says Professor Jemison.
It's because the MTA is falling apart, and raising money through a congestion charge was seen as the least dangerous political way of raising money.
On MSNBC, Bill de Blasio was asked why he is not practicing his own preaching when it comes to driving less.
But the fact is that those cars and that security detail are part of the life of being mayor of New York City.
Following these comments, the mayor came under fire for the 11-mile-long journey, which he undertakes every single day to go to the gym. Now the mayor lives in the Upper East Side, and the gym is in Prospect Park, so that's the 11 miles. Critics were very quick to point out that the mayor actually has 4 gyms around his house, so he could go there very easily to break some sweat without taking a car. Back to you, Caroline.
Thank you, Kinga.
On Sunday morning, multiple explosions across locations in Sri Lanka, including 3 churches and hotels, disrupted the Easter holiday. According to authorities, the attacks claimed over 350 lives and left another 500 wounded. Our reporter, Ronnie Lee, is here to tell us how one community with a large Sri Lankan population is coping with the tragedy.
Yes, Jose, the global community reacted to this tragedy. Here in the tri-state area, the Sri Lankan community felt this attack deeply. Even if they're almost 8,700 miles away from home, they mourned the victims at several vigils and memorial services. We went to one vigil on Monday night at a mosque in Somerset, New Jersey. Sri Lankan Buddhists paid their respects to those who lost their lives in the Easter attack. They poured water into a ceramic cup to help those who perished in their rebirth. At Ali Mosque, almost 200 Sri Lankans of many faiths, along with several other community leaders, gathered to mourn those lost in Sunday's attack.
3 people that I know, 2 of them were in the hotel having Easter brunch. The other one was praying at this famous church in Colombo. They've all perished.
In a minute of silence, people turned on their phone lights. Among them, Sanjeev Silva, the president of Sri Lanka Association of New York. Silva himself is Roman Catholic.
It's really significant to me personally. It's actually at a mosque. It's a symbolic.
symbolic of a unity that can exist between communities of all faiths. The leader of this mosque expressed frustration about the ignorance of non-Muslims and misinterpretations by self-proclaimed followers.
No Muslims will kill anybody. One of the fundamental things that we have in Islam is that if you kill someone, it's like you're killing the whole nation. If you save someone, you're saving the whole humanity.
Many are asking why this tragedy happened. Could it have been prevented? Questions we took to an expert at Columbia University.
The Sri Lankan government was aware that this group was potentially going to become a little bit more violent, but obviously they weren't aware of the degree of coordination that ended up happening between this local group and probably some international collaborators.
So, Ronnie, the Sri Lankan government actually received multiple warnings before the attack, and one even right before the attack. So why did they do anything about it?
It's a very tricky question, Jose. According to Professor Gottlieb, these governments receive so many warnings on potential risks or threats all the time, and it's up to them to pick and choose, right? But usually, unfortunately, it takes a major attack like this for them to really recognize these warnings and take them more seriously.
So how is local government reacting?
There was definitely a lot of anger, Caroline. Actually, just a couple of hours earlier, the president of Sri Lanka asked two of their top security officials to resign. One of the lawmakers actually asked these officials to be arrested and prosecuted.
Thank you, Ronnie.
North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un arrived today in the Russian city of Vladivostok for his first ever summit with President Vladimir Putin. This comes just weeks after Kim held a second summit with American President Donald Trump, where talks stalled after Kim wanted sanctions lifted in order to discontinue the North's testing of nuclear weapons. Sources say that the sanctions and the nuclear program will top the agenda for the bilateral talks in Russia.
Warmer temperatures have caused Greenland ice to melt faster than usual, according to a study released this week on Earth Day. New data published by the National Academy of Sciences found that Greenland lost ice 6 times faster over the last 8 years than in the 1980s. The ice melt added to rising sea levels and threatens coastal cities like Miami, Los Angeles, and New York. Coming up next,
lawmakers and actresses work as servers in a Brooklyn restaurant. Find out what they're pushing for.
and will the Avengers smash box office records this weekend? The changes local theaters are making to meet demand. Next. Former Vice President Joe Biden is expected to announce his 2020 presidential bid this Thursday. His team has been laying the groundwork for a possible presidential run for the last several months. And even before an official announcement, he has been doing well in polling, coming in second behind Bernie Sanders in a New Hampshire poll. He will be joining a crowded field of Democrats, the 20th Democratic candidate to announce his campaign to challenge President Trump. And breaking news, another presidential hopeful, Senator Cory Booker, just pledged that if nominated as the Democratic candidate, he will have a female running mate. Booker was the first of 8 Democratic candidates who spoke at a forum at Texas Southern University, and when asked about campaign, he responded, quote, "I will have a woman running mate." He did not reveal who it might be.
The minimum wage rose to $15 an hour in New York City in January. Other cities across the state will see gradual increases each year until all reach $15 by 2024. Now, local New York representatives are working to bring the rest of the country up to par.
That's right, Jose. It's an age-old fight that might be gaining traction soon. This is the bill that Representative Nydia Velázquez, along with 202 other members of Congress, are fighting for. It's called the Raise the Wage Act, and pretty soon, right now in Congress, they're not sure if they're going to get the 11 votes that they need. 22 are still undecided.
But yet, we are the workers that actually work 8, 12, 16-hour days for nothing.
It is our collective job to send a strong message that those days are over.
At Marlowe & Sons in Williamsburg, U.S. Rep. Nydia Velázquez, along with Assembly members Joanne Simon, Tremaine Wright, Linda Rosenthal, and actress Erica Alexander showed their support for the Raise the Wage Act.
We will pick up the car away from Congress and forward. Okay.
1 in 9 full-time workers in the U.S. are paid wages that still leave them in poverty. That's according to the Economic Policy Institute, a nonprofit research group that works to change wage stagnation. So there's the minimum wage for fast food or entry-level positions. Those workers make an average of $7.25 an hour. And then there's tipped minimum wage for waiters, hairdressers, the workers who make the bulk of their income from tips. Their base pay averages $2.13.
Why would you not want me to be paid what I believe or close to what I believe I'm worth?
If passed, it would raise the national minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour and eradicate a separate tipped wage by 2024.
And we can't behave as though there's no precedent.
According to the U.S. Department of Labor, 10 states already pay tipped workers and minimum wage workers the same hourly rate. The whole point of the Raise the Wage Act is to make sure that a minimum wage is a livable wage, but it comes at a cost. I actually just spoke to Susanna Cotin, the owner of this Harlem restaurant, and she wants people to know that it's not about whether you should raise the minimum wage or not. Her concern is cutting the tip credit, because that's how she keeps her doors open. So we're going to keep our eyes on D.C. to see what will happen on the national level, but for now, Jose, back to you.
Marvel's Avengers Endgame is dominating summer box office sales, on track to open at over $250 million in the domestic box office. The Disney film, which hits theaters everywhere this Friday, sold 5 times as many tickets in its first week of pre-sales as its prequel. With tickets selling out quick, some theaters in New York City, like AMC, are showing the film around the clock. And that's all we have for you today, New York. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Caroline Kimeu.
And I'm Jose Sepulveda. We'll see you next week.